This Sunday, WWE will be airing their annual showing of Backlash, one of their most popular B pay-per-views. Some of the most iconic moments in WWF/E history have taken place on the show that takes place in the stopgap towards SummerSlam, and fans have enjoyed the show almost every year. Not you 2018, we don't talk about you. With this year's show being centred around the greatest match ever, you may be forgiven in thinking you know everything about this pay-per-view's lineage. However, we're here to give you some more information that may have slipped through your fingers. I'm Daniel from Sportskeeda Wrestling, and here are 5 things you didn't know about Backlash. Number 5. All the belts in one match. Backlash 2001 took place in one of the best years in company history for Vince McMahon and his big wrestling meat house. With the company hot off the heels of the commonly accepted best WrestleMania, Mania 17, and with their only competition firmly in the rearview mirror, WWF could basically do anything they wanted and fans would love it. And oh boy did they just go crazy. Stone Cold Steve Austin's heel turn can be argued as both a success and a failure depending on who you speak to, but one of the best things, undoubtedly, that came from it was the two-man power trip, where Steve Austin joined forces with Triple H as a tag team. The two were, obviously, going to be pushed to the moon together, and that's how we get to this very interesting match. The main event of this show was between the two-man power trip, Austin and Hunter, versus Kane and Undertaker, the Brothers of Destruction, who were the current tag champions. So yes, this one match was for the WWF Tag Team Championships that were held by Kane and Taker, but also Steve Austin's WWF World Heavyweight Championship and Triple H's Intercontinental Championship. An absolutely crazy thought in 2020, and it's safe to say we probably won't see something like that ever again. Number 4. AJ Styles is missing the show for the first time. AJ Styles has been an absolute sensation since joining WWE, winning almost every championship there is to win, having incredible matches and being a fantastic character. Perhaps the best moniker the Phenomenal One has in his locker is being Mr. Backlash. Yes, whilst Shawn Michaels is Mr. WrestleMania, Kofi Kingston is Mr. Royal Rumble, and Randy Orton is Mr. Survivor Series, the man who built SmackDown has been on a ridiculous roll at Backlash, with this being the first year since his arrival in the company where he is not appearing. And not only that, every time he has appeared, it has been for a championship. In 2016, he faced off against Dean Ambrose for the WWE Championship. In 2017, he fought for the United States Championship against Kevin Owens, before finally in 2018, where he competed against Shinsuke Nakamura, again for the WWE Championship. Whilst yes, I'll admit, he's probably not going to call himself Mr. Backlash anytime soon, it will certainly be a strange sight watching the show and not having the Phenomenal One present. Number 3. The only submission Iron Man match. Iron Man matches are a rare occurrence in WWE, but when done, they often deliver, creating interesting storylines and completely turning match dynamics on their heads. Do you get disqualified right at the start to lose the first point, but destroy your opponent with a weapon to quickly rack up a few points? Or do you play the long game and attempt to sneak the win at the end? Regardless, the stipulation is loved by fans when done right. The match type allows for specific stipulations to be placed within it as well, such as no disqualification, etc. So, as a result, it may be surprising to learn that the only submission Iron Man match took place at Backlash 2001, pitting Kurt Angle against Chris Benoit with one simple goal: see who could make the other tap out the most within 30 minutes. The match itself is fantastic, no surprise when you look at the talent of the two men involved, with Angle eventually losing 4-3 in overtime. It is, however, an interesting anomaly in the stipulation that is so often thought of in a very specific way. Of course, the match is no longer available on the WWE network for obvious reasons, however, this match will always be looked at as an anomaly in an institution. Number 2. Edge has seen them all. On the first ever Backlash back in 1999, the Brood lost to the Ministry of Darkness in the opening match. 21 years later, Edge will be competing against Randy Orton in the greatest match ever, in a match that will, let's be honest, not live up to that tagline, but hey, God loves a trier, so go for it, lads. Unless the card for this year's show goes through a dramatic change and Jeff Jarrett gets a feature match, Edge will be the only wrestler who competed on the first instance of the Backlash pay-per-view to compete at this year's event. A truly remarkable fact for 2 reasons. The first being that many wrestlers who still compete today were on that show, such as The Undertaker, Triple H, Big Show and Goldust, just to name a few. But the second reason is the far more obvious one. Several years ago, Edge was forced to retire due to neck injuries, and it was commonly accepted he would never be able to compete in the squared circle ever again. So yes, the match this weekend probably isn't going to be the best match ever. But whilst you're watching, remember that a guy lost in the undercard / midcard at the time of the first Backlash, and someone who went through so many personal struggles, is still getting to do what he loves more than 2 decades on. And number 1, Ricky Steamboat's last televised match. When discussing legends of the professional wrestling industry, a name you'll hear sooner rather than later is Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. His career came to a sadly abrupt end in 1994 at WCW's Clash of Champions, where he slipped a disc in his back and was forced into retirement. However, 15 years later, Chris Jericho was doing as usual, running his mouth on WWE programming, proclaiming he was the best ever and no legend could touch him. So, Ricky Steamboat, alongside Roddy Piper and Jimmy Snuka, took on Jericho at the grandest stage of them all, at WrestleMania. Despite being 56 at the time, it was clear the Dragon hadn't missed a beat and kept up with Jericho throughout. As a result, WWE set up Steamboat vs Jericho at next month's Backlash. As I record this, it remains Ricky Steamboat's last televised match. The bout was hard fought and still a technical classic, which eventually resulted in Jericho getting the win. While Steamboat did end up working house shows against Sheamus, Jinder Mahal and the current WWE Champion Drew McIntyre, Backlash has the honour of being the final stop in the historic career of a living legend.